Hi, I'm Dr. Gary Namie. I'm the director of the Workplace Bullying Institute, co-founder of the U.S. movement with my wife, Dr. Ruth Namie.
I'm Dr. Ruth Namie. I have a doctorate in clinical psychology.
I'm Alan Halse, Director of Worksafe New Zealand.
If there's somebody coming to me and you didn't know if you were being bullied or you wondered if you were being bullied, the advice I would give you would be to talk to close friends and relatives and see what they say. And chances are they know that you're being bullied. And I would say from them, know you're not alone. Know that this happens to other people, and know that this is an injury that has been done to you.
Well, first, I think they need to recognize it, and people will recognize it on their own time in their own way. They think that they are bullied, and they don't want to falsely accuse, amazingly.
It's about finding the impact, whether they're currently still working, whether they've got the ability to get out of the situation for a while, depending on the impact on their health. The second thing we would do is assess the level of harm and the degree of the bullying and who the actual bully is, and whether or not in their workplace they could be separated from that person. So before, the big thing we would tell people being bullied is, whatever you do, don't go immediately to your employer without being well prepared. So you need to make an assessment, you need to understand whether you really are being bullied, and if so, how bad it is. You need to, if you have got health impacts, you're not sleeping, you've ended up on sleeping tablets and you're on antidepressants, you need to think about the next month, what's going to happen. So we talk through that with people. So it's about being prepared for if you actually raise a complaint, that your employer mightn't be that receptive and there might be some form of retaliation. So always it's about making sure that you understand that the bullying is real, whether or not there's been a big health impact. The first thing I'd do is to assess whether or not they were being bullied, and I'd use page 16 of the Worksafe New Zealand Workplace Bullying Guidelines that lists the different bullying behaviours. I'd get them to highlight that. It's always the best thing. It's like a bullying questionnaire, so people highlighting that would learn the extent of what's going on.
Most of all, know that this is not something you've done and you are not to blame. That's the most thing. People carry shame with this. Don't be ashamed. Know that this is something that's artificial. The other thing I'd say is go on the web, look for resources. I know that we have a website called workplacebullying.org. Go there, see what we have to say, see the resources we have there. Look for other websites. I'm sure you'll find other things and other people that have other resources to give you.
I guess if somebody came to me and said they were being bullied, I guess the first thing I'd do is check on their health harm. So depending on what that showed me, depending on the person's health, because if a person's health has been impacted and they've been referred to us by a medical practitioner, for example, we would be suggesting that they get time off work. So we'd ask about sick leave.
The way to distinguish bad management or anything else from bullying would be for you to check your health. What symptoms have you noticed? How's your health? And I say, well, have you actually taken your blood pressure? Because the blood pressure is going to be the gateway, and it needs to be measured. And it's asymptomatic. They're not going to feel it. And so it's very difficult to detect. So first I want to improve their detection ability. And have you had health symptoms? And they'll say, well, actually I have. And I'll say, well, have you put that together? Have you connected the dots? Do you realize that you're beginning the onset of a stress-related disease that will worsen if you don't do something and get treatment? Has anything changed in the behaviors, the way you've been treated recently, or has anybody new come to your unit? What is new and different? Because with bullying, there's always a newness. It's a new person, or a new instruction, or a new process like restructuring or some sort of change initiative. So we go from there.
And the other thing is that it's really quite critical is to make sure the person's got support around them. Are they in a relationship? Are they getting good support from their partner? Do they have family and friends that can support them? Because if a person's being bullied, the most critical thing they need is support. And we're talking about emotional support. So there's emotional support critical.
And then we say, look, what do you have for social support? I need to reinforce for them, you need a social support system, because what you're about to go through is going to be very threatening and intimidating. So, I suggest that you go off on disability leave. In other words, go see your physician, your general practitioner. Tell them to write you an off-work order for job stress by explaining how you feel and everything else. 2, while you're off work, I want you to do a couple things. I want you to call a lawyer or an attorney, and I want you to pay for a 30-minute session. Now, many attorneys will give you 30 minutes free on the off chance you'll retain their services. Don't retain any attorneys. Simply rent them for 30 minutes. That means you need to get your story condensed to about 5 minutes. While you're off, do homework with an attorney. Have any laws been potentially violated, and get the advice of that attorney all within 30 minutes as to what you could do or should do, and get a realistic assessment.
But the other thing is that if you're going to be taking a bullying complaint, you do need some kind of representation, and if you belong to a union, you may be able to use your union. If not, you've got to think who can actually help you.
And take your private things home, by the way, tomorrow, before you see the doctor, because you might not, this might surprise you, but you might not return to work. You might not go back there, and you don't want your bully rifling through your desk. Okay.
The most important thing is your health, because it could severely damage your health, your career prospects in your job, and your relationships. So very important that you do a lot of research, make sure you get those factors right before you actually lodge a complaint. And once you lodge a complaint, it becomes another topic, which is it's a process that doesn't end quickly. So if you raise the complaint, and this is the key for both support and representation, the process doesn't take a week. It takes months, and sometimes even years from start to finish. So it's making sure that you've got the emotional and often the financial wherewithal to last that whole process through. So preparation, make sure you're organised before you even raise the complaint.
Second professional to check in with is a mental health counselor. Go see a counselor who is an expert in trauma-informed approaches. Okay? Do not use the company's employee assistance program, because even though they're pledged to confidentiality, we've heard too many times of breaches. Next, I want you to build a business case. I'm going to give you a homework assignment. You need to build a business case that the bully who is bothering you, or the person who's bothering you, is too expensive to keep. Try and monetize turnover, that it's happened since you were there and before you were there. How many people have been driven out? At what cost? Were there legal settlements? What about the cost of replacing people? Take 1.5 times their salary times the number of people. Add it up. Add up the number of days of absenteeism just by you for mental health equilibrium restoration, for you to get your head back. Figure out how many others have done it for how many years times the number of days times the hourly rate. Got it? Add all of that money up. Now you've got quite a sizable estimate of the cost of bullying that could have been prevented of just that one bully and disrupting the workplace that you've been in. Now you take that and schedule a 15-minute interview, a meeting with the highest level person you can where you work, with a person that you must be sure is not a relative of the bully or the friend of the bully, who doesn't probably even know the bully. That's who you want. A finance person, a risk management director, someone like that, not the head of HR. And you go and you say, I need a 15-minute meeting. You know, I'm Smith from down in the gully in the trenches, but I have a money-saving idea for you. I'd like to run it by you for 15 minutes. May I have that? No threat, you get the meeting. At the meeting, well, prior to the meeting, not only have you got your cost estimate already so that you're basically acting like a consultant, but you also have a small list of demands. What do you need to be made safe? What do you want to be able to stay there, to allow you to stay there and be safe and not be threatened and scared? So you go at the meeting, you tell them what you do and say, I've laid this out for you. Look at this sheet. These are all preventable costs. At some point they'll say, well, what the heck do you want me to do about it? Oh, now that's your demand list. Keep it to yourself and share it. Well, I would like to be safe. Ideally, I think that person should either be sacked or moved or transferred. And they'll say, no, that's Bob. I love Bob. Well, then may I think you benefit from my record, and I have a good record. This is no time for humility. This is the time for you to sell yourself and prove to them what your 15 and 20 years of employment has contributed to this company and this firm. And then if they say, you know what, I love Bob, in fact, you're bothering me, you're fired, expect it, because that's what happens all too often. But every once in a while, an enlightened manager will say, you know, that makes sense. I think we can find a place for you, or I can do this, or maybe we'll have him moved, or yes, you're the 27th. Here's the greatest news. You could hear for the first time you were the 27th person who said the same thing about Bob, and they say, you know what, maybe I better let go of Bob. It's got to start somewhere. That's how you do it. Hopefully you find those other 26 people first and go en masse. But please, please, please know you did nothing wrong. You didn't cause this. You have a solution. And if that employer doesn't want to hear all of this good information and enjoy the contribution you can make in years to come, leave, because you'll never be safe there and no job is worth dying for.
A lot of people have the perception that the target, some people call them victims, but the target, I don't even like that term because it literally sounds like they've got a target on their back, which is, you know, just not human really. But the target's weak, the target deserved it, the target did something wrong. Can you, from the research, just give us the real headlines of the common characteristics of targets of bullying?
Targets are not weak. Targets are threatening because of the strength they possess. There's threatening to the bully because they are technically more skilled, they're emotionally, they're well balanced, they're liked by coworkers and clients, the public, everyone. They are typically the go-to expert with years of veteran experience, and they're relied upon by others to know how to do the job the best. They are the internal expert. That's usually who gets targeted. So that's why you're a target. You're not a poor performer, you're not a slug, you're not someone that needs to be banished. You're almost a model employee, but that's threatening. You are probably too nice, you are probably too humble, you probably are too optimistic that the world is fair and that the workplace is fair. And that has led you to get into this kind of trouble. But again, you didn't choose it. This is undeserved mistreatment. You never invited it. No one would wake up on a work day and say, bring this on. So that's part of the unfairness of workplace bullying, but please know that you were targeted for or isolated because of the strength you possess. not a weakness.
And if there was one thing, just one thing that they could do to protect their health, what would that be? What would be the number one?
Number one is go off work and seek treatment for whatever it is that ails you. Take care of your health. Explore all kinds of alternative ways to be made whole again. You only have one you. You can't be breaking down. The quicker you deal with the injustice of the bullying, the less harmed you will be, and therefore the more capable and able you will be to pursue the next job.
The one thing I can tell you, there's no single solution. There's no silver bullet. You can't just do one thing and the thing improves. It depends on your employer, and if you're actually being bullied at work and nobody's actually noticed it already, it's pretty obvious that there is a culture within that organisation, so it's not going to be something that your employer might want to fix in a hurry. So yeah, preparation, but look after yourself. Whatever you do, you're the most important person in this.
The most important thing to do is to control the nature of your departure. You need to leave pointing accusatory fingers without self-blame. You will be healthier for that. I know it sounds a bit angry at this point to you, maybe, perhaps, but this is what will enable you to move on to the next job and interview again. If, on the other hand, the bully and their sycophants control the nature of how you are separated, and you leave in silence with your tail between your legs, ashamed, and shame is a sense of worthlessness you do not deserve to experience, that you have nothing to be ashamed of. But if you were to leave in that manner, we found that targets who do so take the longest to recover. So go out with your head held high and your dignity reclaimed.
But most of all, I'd say, please, please know that you did nothing wrong and that this is something you will recover from.